Who would you rather see as the Vikings starting quarterback going into 2024? The regular season statistical machine, who has yet to make a serious playoff run? Captain Kirk Cousins? Or the Super Bowl champion wonderkind, who is the face of one of the worst trades in recent memory? Quarterback Russell Wilson. Who do you got? Continue watching for our thoughts.
As of right now, the Minnesota Vikings are betting favorites to land quarterback Russell Wilson for 2024. Who do you want?
Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson's. First, I want everybody to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We will give our final picks of who do we think should be the Vikings quarterback next year, regardless of I think no matter what, I think we're all on team draft a quarterback early if you can, make sure it's your guy, whatever. But we also can contest to that we don't really want to go into next season with some backup quarterbacks like we've done with this year, and that means it'd be nice to have someone that's capable in Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. Even though I'll say right away, disclaimer, I know for a fact most people who are watching this, as soon as people say Russell Wilson, they're going to be like, no way. I've already seen a lot of content creators make content. It's like, nope, not even a question about Russell Wilson. But I'm here to say, I think there's something we should look into more with Russell Wilson. I don't think it's that cutthroat that Russell Wilson can't be the guy here. I do think he is 100% better option than we can get with a lot of quarterback options coming into next season. Maybe not named Kirk Cousins, but a lot of other options. I think Russell Wilson would be a lot better. But I think for starting this, I think we should dive into some stats just to kind of see what we're looking at here. And I'm going to jump in specifically with some Kirk Cousins stats. So this is before his injury. Obviously, Kirk Cousins was having arguably an MVP season before his injury statistically, even though we were 3-4 by the time his injury happened. But he had an 86.1 overall grade by PFF, 85.1 passing, 64.8 rushing, obviously. Passing yards, 2,331 yards, 18 passing touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. You know, another really good year for Kirk Cousins statistically. We weren't winning as many games as we would like with him, kind of like what I mentioned there. He's ultimately a player that we're more concerned of how he's going to be in playoffs. Can he win the big games? And I think that's the difference between him and Russell Wilson. And I'll kind of jump into Russell Wilson's stats right here as well. So we got Russell Wilson here this year. I mean, last year was obviously bad. The first year of him being with the Denver Broncos after the trade, that still, regardless of how Russell Wilson's played this year, was a very bad trade, and the Denver Broncos probably should not have done it. But Russell Wilson overall 77.5, which is about almost 10 points lower than Kirk Cousins, but definitely a better year than last year. 3,075 yards throwing, 26 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. But again, what we were talking about Kirk Cousins, this is the big difference, is Russell Wilson is known to play better in big situations, where Kirk Cousins is known to play worse in those same situations. Obviously, Russell Wilson, 3rd-round pick, comes in, wins a championship his rookie year. 2 years later, I think, is when he had another chance to win a Super Bowl and ended up being a stupid call. They should have ran Marshawn Lynch, whatever. But ultimately, from there on out, Russell Wilson was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, as far as a career goes, everybody would probably pick Russell Wilson over Kirk Cousins, other than maybe a select few. But as far as these last couple of years, I do think that those tables have turned for most people, especially for Vikings fans, as you're not really seeing the explosiveness out of Russell Wilson that you do see from other players. But as we've seen against Russell Wilson this year, and a lot of people had a lot of bad things to say about him until Broncos kind of went on their win streak, is just that he still makes smart plays. And when the game's on the line, and we've seen this in person, he steps up and he's still able to make the big plays when it matters the most. And this is the biggest differential between him and Kirk Cousins. And you got to think, like, who do you want if you're going into playoffs? Yeah, if you're going into the regular season and you want who's going to give you the best record, who's going to give you the best statistics, who's going to give Justin Jefferson the most yards, it's probably going to be Kirk Cousins. But who would you want once we get to playoffs? If we can make the playoffs, who would you want under center? Do you want Kirk Cousins under center in those situations, or do you want Russell Wilson under center in those situations? And I think that is the big question moving forward. What's your thoughts on this quarterback conundrum going into the offseason, potentially betting favorites?
And it's kind of crazy how similar these guys are, right? Like, because age isn't a factor because they were both obviously drafted in the 2013 or 2012 class. And then, of course, kind of like those late to mid round guys who actually have built successful careers. Obviously, one a little more successful than the other when it comes to playoffs.
Right.
And then, obviously, you're looking at their age. You also got to factor in Kirk Cousins coming off that injury, so that's a fair point as well. And obviously, like you said, Russell Wilson, Super Bowl champ, probably definitely should have won too. And this year, and people might come at you with the argument that Russell Wilson is benched this year, but that had nothing to do with his play. That's all because the Broncos are kind of being a shitty franchise right now and don't want to pay him those injury guarantees. Basically, just benching him, not because of his play. I mean, 3,075 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. That's exactly what you want from Russell Wilson. Like, he actually he didn't look like prime Russ. He still doesn't look like Russell Wilson of old, but he's definitely a competent quarterback, and we can all see that.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, Russell Wilson, though, just kind of has that really weird attitude. Like, there's something about him that you're just like, this guy, he's different. Like, Kirk Cousins is different, but he's like a goofy, kind of fun different.
Like a good different, where Russell Wilson's
one of those guys.
arrogant.
I wouldn't know what I would do if I was hanging out with him. I feel like he's one of those guys that you're just like, he talks and you're just like, oh my goodness, this guy's really weird. Which, again, has nothing to do with things on the football field, right? But so it is crazy how similar these two guys are when you take out the playoff pedigree. But obviously, when you get to that point, yeah, Russell Wilson has made a lot bigger plays. I mean, that the connection him and I don't even know who was the receiver. Was it Jermaine Kearse that he threw that the ball that would have won them the game that got them down to like the 5 yard line or whatever? The one where it was like,
I think it was him.
Was it him? But I mean, so
so.
Russell Wilson, like, that's what he does. He's able to scramble and he throws the beautiful looping rainbow and receivers come down with it, and it's awesome, right? So I can definitely see why people would say Russell Wilson, but then Kirk Cousins. And this is my biggest argument if you're going into next season, is obviously this team does want a rookie franchise or a franchise quarterback for the future. But if you want to draft and let a guy develop, and you still want to bring a guy back who will be your starter next year, the argument for Kirk Cousins is, yes, he does have the Achilles injury, and Russell Wilson is pretty healthy now. But the biggest thing is, would you want a guy who's got to come in and learn the offense and come in and learn your system? Or you want to bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins, and this is the big plus for Kirk, who knows the offense, who's operated the offense successfully. So basically, there's no implementation. It's a guy coming in, and he's just going to take the offense and go. But then also with Russell Wilson, he's smart. He's able to figure out, he figured out Denver's offense. Like, he would be able to come in and learn the offense pretty quickly, I feel like, and be able to run it. But it's still going to take a little more time coming into training camp and OTAs for him to get accustomed to that and get accustomed to throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, where Kirk Cousins already has that connection with those two. So it's obvious there are pluses and minuses to both, and things that I can see why people would go one way or the other. So it actually is a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing about Russell Wilson, going more towards his side on that, is you're 100% correct. I mean, Kirk Cousins knows this offense. He's been on this team. He knows these players. He's been on here. What is it, 6 years now?
Yeah.
And that is definitely fair, though. I would say, with Russell Wilson, it does kind of feel like you just want him to get into playoffs. So as long as he's ready to go once that comes around, which I think he's more than capable. If we had him on this team once Kirk Cousins went down, 100% chance we're going into playoffs. He's more than capable to do that, for sure. And then once you get there, that's when you want Russ to be Russ more than Kirk to be Kirk. That's the big difference here, I think. And I think it is fair that you do have to look at it that way. Though I would also say another thing we have to talk about is money. Like, I'm on team, like I already mentioned earlier, I'm on team draft a quarterback early, which means if that's the case, you want that quarterback to hit, which means you do not want to extend a quarterback for more than a couple years, even if it's Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. We also don't want to pay them too much money as well. And you kind of have to get this feeling that, I think, even if Kirk Cousins it's definitely a good argument that Kirk Cousins is the better quarterback right now. I think it is. Maybe not in big moments, but I think it's a good argument. But I can't imagine that Russell Wilson will be cheaper than Kirk Cousins. If anything, I'm assuming Kirk Cousins will definitely end up being a cheaper option than Russell Wilson. So you do have to put that in mind, especially if you're going with the path of getting a young quarterback and eventually making him the guy, so you don't have to pay a veteran quarterback salary in the future. So I do think that's something that we do have to put in perspective in that as well, and that is what I did in this scenario. But as far as like, who do I think is the best chance to win? I mean, I would have to say I think Kirk Cousins gives us the best chance to win, in my opinion. I think he is the better quarterback right now. overall, mostly from an arms perspective. You know, Russell Wilson does have that ability that I really would like any of our quarterbacks of the future have, where he is able to escape the pocket and escape pressure and extend plays with his arms. But obviously, as he's 35, a lot of these quarterbacks who kind of bank on their athleticism more than, you know, their arm talent and stuff seem to decline quicker in the NFL, and that's a reason why I do think you see that more from Russell Wilson compared to Kirk Cousins. But as far as straight mentality goes, if I'm in playoffs, I would probably rather rock with Russell Wilson. But it brings us to the final question, though. Would you rather have Kirk Cousins, or would you rather have Russell Wilson? What is your choice on that?
For how this team is built and the fact that we know within the next couple seasons we will draft a quarterback and develop them, I'm going to have to take Kirk Cousins for a couple of reasons here. First off, because he would be the unquestioned, if you sign one of these guys, they would be the unquestioned starter going into 2024. When it comes to Kirk Cousins, I feel like this team, I mean, obviously we've seen it. We've seen it this season. The team respects Kirk Cousins, the coaching staff, the ownership groups, Kwesi, they love Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson likes playing with him. Like, Kirk Cousins has gained an appreciation from his teammates this offseason. I do think, or this season, I think that is a big thing. But then also, like I said earlier, it's just the fact that he already knows the offense. And I think it'd be much easier for him to teach the protege, the young guy coming in, about the offense because he knows it so well. And I honestly just don't know how Russell Wilson's attitude would mesh with this team. So for those reasons, I'm going with Kirk Cousins. Yes, I 100% agree with the playoffs. Like, if we were talking solely playoffs, I'm taking Russ because he's been there, done that, and he's able to make those plays where Kirk hasn't shown us that yet. But just with the makeup of this team, what we want this team to look like in the next 5 seasons, I'm taking Kirk for those reasons.
Yeah. Me, I've been sitting here talking about it, thinking about it, and, you know, I mean, I respect Kirk more since he's went down, but I still think I have to go with Kirk Cousins, and exactly with what you said. I like Russ, and I want him. I like to see what he is in playoffs, but I'm more worried about our future, and I'm more worried about the money. And I think if we were to keep one of these guys around, I'm spending the least money as I can. And with Kirk coming off his Achilles, I'm hoping he can give us as team-friendly deal as possible, so we're not total shit next year, and we still have a quarterback potential of the future is what we're hoping, as long as there's one worth taking for us. And then also on the other side, exactly what you said with the attitude. I mean, Kirk Cousins, his work ethic mixed with who he is as a person, I think is a lot better for a young quarterback to be under and study from, compared to someone like Russell Wilson, who does kind of come off as selfish based off of what reports have came up from him. So I think for the future, I think keeping Kirk Cousins in comparison would be the better play. But as far as winning a championship, it probably is Russell Wilson. But I do think we have to head towards finding our franchise quarterback. And if we're going to have a bridge quarterback, I think Kirk Cousins is the better option.
Yep, for sure. But anyway, that's our thoughts. We want to know your guys' thoughts. Kirk or Russ? Drop them in the comments. Let us know. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe and like the video. See you guys next time right here on the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.